Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Today is a fun topic. It's about marketing vet telemedicine. We have a special guest, Erin Bury, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her towards the end of the session. So, quick intro to Pawzy. For those of you who don't know, we are a website that connects pet parents to healthcare services and advice. My background is in tech. I have been in tech for the last 10 years. I was the part of the founding team of a company called RateHub.ca, which connects Canadians to personal finance products, and built it up to about 6 million annual users as the CMO. We have a really great advisory board, which includes Dr. Walt Ingerson, who you might know from the pet health community, and Stuart Stillberg, who's our technical advisor and the former CTO at Expedia and Realtor.com. So a lot of marketplace experience on the team and marrying with pet health. And Erin is actually an advisor to Pawzy as well, and she will be speaking more later. If you are, let me just a sec. I need to minimize this. If you want to see the first two sessions of this webinar series, you can go to our YouTube channel. We did record them. So youtube.com/Pawzyco. And the first two topics were on an intro to vet telemedicine, and the second topic was integrating vet telemedicine into your practice. We ran some polls in the first couple of webinars, and I'm going to share some of the results here. So webinar 1 poll results, we asked about, you might hear my dog in the background. I don't know if you heard her bark, but she's chasing some squirrels or something. So we asked vets in the first webinar what COVID, if there has been an impact of COVID-19 on revenue. And as you can see, majority of people, nearly 70%, said that revenue was impacted and is lower in April 2020 compared to the same period last year. So if you're experiencing that, others are as well. Then we asked about telemedicine and patient outcomes and how people felt about telemedicine. And again, nearly 70% thought that it could improve patient outcomes. But still about a quarter of people were undecided on what the outcomes would be. Then we asked people about their telemedicine usage. So you can see that a lot of people, over 80%, have adopted telemedicine during COVID-19. Some 30% practice before, and then over half actually decide to practice after, with a small number not planning to. Not really sure why they joined the webinar, to be honest, if they weren't planning to practice telemedicine, but hey. Another interesting thing that we talked about in the second webinar, which on the topic of integrating telemedicine, was how vets are adopting virtual care. So we compared it to human health and looked at the Canadian Medical Association survey, which asked Canadians what sort of virtual care services they would like. So here you can see that majority of people wanted to be able to book appointments online. They wanted to email their healthcare provider, and they would like video visits. And this was all before COVID-19, so one can only assume that these numbers have gone up. So we asked vets what virtual care services they currently provide, and most vets, as you can see, 83% are using email to communicate with their clients. Most have a website, and nearly half are doing online payment processings. However, a much lower number have online appointment booking and online medical records, and some had none of the above. So there is room to improve and provide more virtual care services that Canadians are looking for. So today, that's a recap from the last two. Today, our focus is going to be on marketing. So first, we're going to cover the marketing mix, then cost-based pricing, competition-based pricing, promotional pricing. Then we'll talk about your sales channels, content marketing and SEO, public relations, and then we'll end with a Q&A. So just a reminder, you can ask questions throughout the webinar in the chat channel, and my colleague Nicole is going to keep track of them and will answer them at the end. So you can ask questions of both me and Erin. Feel free to specify if you want to ask one of us in particular. And of course, you can also ask questions at the end. There will be plenty of time to do so. Okay, so whenever I approach any type of new product, I bring it back to basics in the 4 P's of marketing. And it is very basic, but it actually helps a lot to frame your thinking, because I often find that you will forget one of these things when you're going out to market a product. So it's always good to frame your thinking around these things. There's a reason that it's in all marketing textbooks. So the 4 P's of marketing are product, price, place, and promotion. In the first 2 webinars, we really talked about developing the product and how to integrate the product, the place, into your practice. And then today, we are focusing more on the price and promotional aspect. There are a bunch of different types of pricing strategies. There's probably 20 or something. But the ones that are most relevant to vet telemedicine and small businesses are these pricing strategies. So, and we'll go into detail for each one. So the first is cost-based pricing strategy. Second, we'll talk about competition pricing. So looking at the market and developing a price based on that. And then third, we will talk about promotional pricing, which includes things like discounts, bundles, etc. Cost-based pricing. So when you're thinking about cost-based pricing, you really want to ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what are your costs? And then 2, what sort of margin do you want to make? So we do have some data from the OVMA 2018 economic report on average vet salaries that can help us work backwards into an average hourly wage, as well as an average practice owner margin. So with telemedicine, your costs are mostly variable and they're mostly staff. You don't have high fixed costs. The only fixed costs you would have are your hardware, so your computer, your phone, maybe a webcam, maybe a headset like this, your software, and then your internet connection. So as long as you can allocate those fixed costs across your telemedicine business, then you will pretty easily recoup those costs. So really want to focus on the variable costs, which is staffing. So from the OVMA data, you can see that the average reported salaries of associate DVMs, and then the average DVM salary, so ranging in, and if you work that backwards, it works out to be about $50 or an hour for an associate DVM, or $97 an hour for the average DVM. And then the the report also stated that the average practice owner makes about 23% margin. So if we're to bring this into a example for cost-based pricing, let's say we are using our associate DVMs to run our telemedicine and bringing in the 22.7% margin, then this, if you were to price on a cost-based pricing example, then that works out to approximately, you want to make around $65 an hour. If you break that down into different consultation times, these would be the amounts. So for a 15-minute consult, around $16, $22 for 20-minute, and then $32 for a 30-minute consult. You can use this the similar methodology to work out what you need to make on a regular DVM salary. It'll be roughly double, and then you can decide whether or not it makes sense to do a blended rate or to have different prices for different levels of vets. You could allocate just your associate DVMs to telemedicine and more senior vets to you know, the sort of higher price tag services. You can do with it what you want, but this is a model to break out to just sort of outline what sort of prices you can charge. The second pricing model that we're going to look at is competition-based pricing. So for telemedicine, it's still pretty new, but we do have a few comparisons that we can look at in Canada. And it's interesting to look at both pets and human telemedicine providers. So on the pet side, you've got a couple providers, one being Pawzy, the other one being SmartVet. Then on the human side, the most popular choices are Babylon by TELUS and Maple. So these are the prices that that telemedicine providers charge. So pretty similar across pets and humans, as you can see. The interesting thing about the human side is that they don't actually specify the appointment length. And from further investigation, it's really up to the doctor. So it's flexible. Some appointments might be shorter, some might be longer, but obviously the doctors must have some sort of internal benchmarking that they set. On the other way to think about pricing from these insights are, you can think about pricing by the type of service. So SmartVet breaks things down by the type of service, so instant message versus phone call versus a video call. Whereas Maple does it by the time of day. So weekday pricing is the lowest, but then if you want after hours care, then you pay a premium. And then Pawzy and Babylon just charge a flat rate. And there's no right or wrong, but it's good to think about the different types of ways that you can think about pricing. The next type of pricing model is promotional pricing. So, you know, often when you launch a new product, it's a good idea to offer a discount. And you can offer it across your client base. You can offer it to new patients only. Maybe you can get some partners and offer discounts through those channels. Really think about all the different places that you can offer discounts. People love them. The other thing you can think about are packages. So if you buy X number of telemedicine sessions, maybe you get a percentage off, or you get a free session if you buy in bulk. And then finally, is there a way to include telemedicine in a larger package? So telemedicine doesn't have to be a standalone product. In the US and in Europe, telemedicine is included in wellness plans in some vet organizations. So thinking about things like that, and if it can be an add-on service to something that you already offer. Moving on to promotion. There's lots of different avenues that you can pursue promotion. But for small businesses like yours, it's often good to think about low-cost promotion opportunities. So we're going to focus on three primarily. The first being sales channels. Then we're going to talk a little bit about content marketing and SEO, and then Erin's going to talk about public relations. So sales channels, the way to think about this is how can you market to your existing client base? This is the cheapest way to market, and sorry, you might have a bit of a view behind me. How can you market to your existing client base? So you can add call to actions to your existing online channels. So update your email signature, put links up on your website, write a blog announcement. Second, work your CRM. So you all have practice management software, and you can email and text your existing clients, set up auto reminders, drip campaigns, run a promotional offer, and then of course post on social media. So this is the easiest, lowest hanging fruit way that you can get the word out there about your telemedicine service. And who knows, like you know, somebody who might have not thought about booking an appointment might consider it because it's through telemedicine, because it's convenient and it's cheaper than going into the clinic. So you might actually get additional sales than you otherwise anticipated. Now I want to talk a little bit about content marketing and SEO. As you can imagine, the interest in telehealth in general has really taken off since COVID hit. This is a snapshot of Google Trends, and as you can see, the interest in telehealth in general has gone up a lot, and then the interest in online vets, telemedicine, etc., has also gone up, has almost nearly doubled. What are people actually searching for online? The most search terms tend to be around online vets. So things like Ask a Vet, free online vet, 24-hour vet. And then the second most searched terms are around vet telemedicine. So telemedicine more than telehealth. So with these keywords, Google doesn't take into account synonyms, so you have to actually be careful in which terms you're using. So telehealth actually isn't a highly searched term, but telemedicine is. So it does matter the exact words that you're using. One thing that I found really interesting is that Google will not give you any information about COVID-19 and pets. They've actually excluded it from their results, and it's unclear why. Google might be gating all COVID-19 search information. Sometimes with medical stuff, Google doesn't share that information. So it'll be interesting to see if they eventually do. The other thing that's relevant is to think about once you've figured out what topics you want to cover, are the different formats. So here are some examples from Pawzy that we've use to get our content out there. So we have a blog. Here's a pet owner's guide to vet telemedicine. The second format is video. So we've been recording these webinars and then posting them. And then third are there guides that you can send over email or download on your website that you can connect people with. So this particular guide is on the different use cases for telemedicine. So a lot of people aren't clear exactly what you can use telemedicine for. It's not like you can perform a spay or neuter over telemedicine, but you can talk about symptoms. You can give general advice. You can answer questions about COVID-19. And once you've established a VCPR, you can also distribute medication. Now I'm going to pass things over to Erin, who, in addition to being an advisor to Pawzy, is the CEO at a company called Willful, which is an online will service. You should check it out. You can make a will in under 20 minutes. I have done so myself and can verify that. She's an entrepreneur, speaker, a startup advisor, and former technology journalist, and we're really lucky to have her speaking with us today. I'm going to stop my share.
Thank you, KL. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm located out in Prince Edward County, so our Wi-Fi is not always the strongest, so just give me a little wave or ping me in chat if anyone can't hear me. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I am not a pet parent, but I grew up with dogs, and my mom has 2 horses and she has cats. So I'm around pets all the time. And that's why I was really excited to become an advisor to Pawzy, because I'm really passionate about using technology to innovate in any industry. And I've been really excited to see the inroads that KL has been able to make with bringing virtual care to pet parents. As someone who's also in an industry where things typically happen offline, it's been obviously not great to see the impact that COVID has had on our personal lives, but it's been great to see how it's almost forced innovation in these very traditional industries. So I thought today I would just talk a little bit about knowing that you're kind of looking at how to market your telemedicine services to potential clients, and knowing that I'm probably right in the demographic, mid-30s, of the type of people that you're trying to reach. And a lot of our customers at Willful are also people going through life stages, life moments, and are in a very similar audience. I thought I'd talk a little bit about PR and thought leadership, because it's one of the things that we focus on a ton at Willful as a B2C company. And I think it's something that can really help you to attract clients, to build SEO through backlinks from media outlets, and also just to become a little bit of an expert and a thought leader. I mean, you're all already thought leaders and experts in your own sphere, but thought leadership in the media is a way to get that at a much bigger scale. So I'm just going to share my screen and run through some content for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So if you have them, just pop them into the chat and we can go through them in a little bit. Now let me just find my presentation here. This is always the fun part, is trying to find it. I'll just share my desktop and then open it up. Okay. KL, give me a thumbs up if you can see my full screen here.
Thumbs up.
Wonderful. Okay. And if you don't see it switching between slides, when I say that I'm switching, just let me know. I thought I'd just run through my background. So as KL mentioned, I've worked in-house at companies leading their PR and media relations. I spent 2 years as a journalist writing about companies, so I can really speak to it from the perspective of someone who's received pitches and, figured out what they wanted to write about and what was newsworthy. I ran a tech PR agency for about 6 years, and we worked with some pet-related companies like Pawzy, as well as Rover, which is like the Airbnb for house sitters. And I now lead all of the communication strategy at Willful, in addition to doing CEO stuff. So I thought I'd start just by, for anybody who maybe hasn't employed PR or isn't even sure really what it is, I thought I'd start by defining it. I think a lot of people assume that PR is this glamorous, fun party planning thing like Samantha Jones on Sex and the City. Hopefully some of you get that reference. But really, PR is communication between you and your key audiences. So it can take the vein of earned coverage, which is really just any coverage where a media outlet writes about you without you having to pay for it. It can also be things like speaking opportunities, which, right now are not happening at in-person events, but there are very much many virtual events that are happening, like this one. It could be coverage in trade publications. So I'm assuming, are lots of trade publications for vets and for people in the industry. It can be thought leadership, which is going to be a big focus of what I touch on today. So, op-eds that you write that are published in media outlets, commentary. So a journalist asking you for a comment on a current event and asking you for your expertise. A lot of the times it's starting to include things like influencer outreach. Fun fact, we did a campaign about estate planning and pets at Willful, because one of the reasons pets end up in shelters is that their owners pass away and haven't planned for them. And we actually hired a dog influencer, a dog that has tens of thousands of followers on Instagram, and we paid this dog to post about Willful and the importance of estate planning. So influencers, especially when you're trying to reach an end consumer, can be a really great way to get your message out to people who already have an audience built in. Increasingly, PR can include things like sponsored content. We know that media outlets often struggle to monetize, and they're increasingly looking for different ways to diversify revenue. And so one of those ways is through articles that you pay for to be published. And then it can also include things like government relations and events, but I think that's probably a little bit less important today. For us in the wills and estates world, government relations is really important because we're trying to get things like digital signatures passed through to law, which requires a lot of lobbying and relationship building. So why does it matter? I mean, I wanted to touch on this because I think a lot of times there's this misconception that, PR isn't important, or being in the media is a nice to have, but not a must have. But in my career, I've really seen that PR is the biggest thing that can help you build awareness and legitimacy. And if someone's trying to decide between your clinic and someone else's, things like reviews are absolutely going to help to sway their opinion. But coverage from third parties, especially trusted media sources, can be another way to provide legitimacy for you. They can also position you positively to stakeholders. So maybe that's not necessarily the customer, but an investor in your business, or a potential partner, a landlord if you're trying to secure a physical space. And PR can absolutely drive sales. KL is really the expert at driving consistent traffic over time. She has a background in SEO and content marketing. So it's really important to note that while PR can absolutely drive a ton of sales and traffic, as an example, we were featured in a Canadian press article in March about the rise in people doing their wills during COVID. And we had over 6,000 visitors just from that piece of coverage in one day. And we had our highest sales day ever. And it was all directly attributable to that piece of media coverage. It's great and it can drive sales. It's just not as consistent. You can't really predict when you're going to get media coverage. And you also can't predict which pieces of coverage are going to drive sales and traffic versus the ones that are great for legitimacy, but maybe don't actually add to your bottom line. KL, I mentioned, is a big SEO person. So media outlets are very authoritative, and getting a link back to your website is a really great way to help improve your Google search rankings. And something that I always tell small business owners, which I know you all are, is it really helps you to tell the story behind the company. It helps to showcase more of your personality, why you're doing this, why you want to help pet owners across Canada. And then it also helps you build your expertise. So maybe you're really an expert in one area of veterinary care, or you specialize in one animal. It can really help you to build up your expertise in that space. And really, in my experience, it's been really instrumental for making people think you're more successful than you are. If you're featured in the Globe and Mail, people automatically think that you're super successful. For showing momentum and growth over time, when people see, one article a month for a year, they just assume that you've been growing. Making people think you're an expert. I know you all are actually experts, but it's great for making people think that you are, and for driving inbound inquiries from partners, customers, and investors. So I'm not going to run through all 5 steps. I do have a full copy of this deck that has a ton more information. So I'll send that to Kerri-Lynn, and maybe she can add that to the summary that she sends out, just in case you wanted to go through in more detail. In the interest of time, I'm just going to go through a couple of the steps to getting started. So the first step, if you're thinking about, how do I get the media to talk about me, is really to think about where you actually want to be featured. I had a lot of clients who had tech companies, and they would say, well, I want to be featured in TechCrunch or Wired, which are big technology publications. But in reality, their customer was new moms. And so I'd say, well, new moms are not reading Wired. That's where you want to be because you read that publication. But the first step is really, where do you want to be featured, and where do your customers spend time? What are they reading? Because those are the publications that you're trying to target. So, it's really asking yourself, who am I targeting and why? If you're just trying to get attention from customers to book telemedicine appointments, then really focus on that. But maybe, a lot of tech companies, they try to get coverage so that they can hire or so that they can appeal to investors. So just define the why behind why you're doing it and which audience you're trying to reach. And then, figure out which publications they're reading. That could be as simple as every client that you have a conversation with, and the conversation with, hey, can I ask, what are your 3 go-to media outlets? Maybe send out a survey to some of your existing customer base via email, or just ask people on your social networks to give you feedback. But, if you're targeting millennial pet parents who are 25, they're reading very different publications than a mid-40s mom who's booking an appointment with you. So it's important to define who makes up your core customer base and to figure out which publications they're reading. And then you're really looking at, who should I actually be targeting at those publications? You've probably all seen a masthead in a magazine, which is just that big list of all of the staff, from editors to graphic designers. So it's figuring out, who actually writes about lifestyle content or pets. There's not always a pet editor at a publication like Chatelaine or Canadian Living, but I think, pet care and vet care falls under health. It could fall under health. It could fall under lifestyle. Or there might actually be a dedicated pet section to that publication. So, and most of those mastheads in physical publications will include their contact information, their emails. And if not, you can go online to their website, and their contact us page typically has all of those details there. So I guess the biggest question that I always get asked is, what actually makes something newsworthy? If I'm running this vet clinic and I'm offering telemedicine, how do I actually get the media to talk about me? And there's a few ways to do it. And I think it actually ties in really well to the moment that we're going through with COVID. So the first thing is to tie what you're doing to an event. So maybe that's National Puppy Day or National Pet Owners Week, or maybe it's just, a holiday like Christmas, where that a lot of people are going to have their dogs getting into food and presents, and maybe they get sick a bit more often. And trends are a big thing. I mean, right now, the move to telemedicine is a huge trend for people and for pets. The adoption of pets during COVID is a huge trend. New pet owners who are trying to navigate being a pet owner for the first time. And obviously, COVID itself is also a trend and an event. A lot of people are writing about any aspect of COVID, from the surge in people writing wills to pet owners adopting more pets, or pet owners turning to virtual care. So there's actually never been a better time for you to be going out to the media, or for you to look to how you can actually incorporate yourself into this conversation. And then people really love numbers. The media love numbers. So, we've commissioned reports and data on the percentage of Canadians that don't have wills. I know that Kerri-Lynn has commissioned some data on, pet owner habits across Canada, and use those for media outreach. So it might not be feasible for you to get that data. Again, it could be sending out a survey to your client base. It could be working with a research firm. Maybe this is something that you don't have right now. It could just even be data on your appointments, right? 50% of people are booking appointments after 9 p.m. That shows a trend in how people are using your services. And then tied to the headlines. This is really the one that I think you can capitalize on right now. Everyone is talking about COVID, increase in pet adoptions, the move to telemedicine. And so you can relevantly comment on what's happening in the news and add value. And most media outlets, whether that's a broadcast journalist, a radio host, or someone writing for a newspaper, they're always looking for sources to interview for stories who are experts. So you are absolutely in exactly the right place to be one of those experts that they might want to talk to. And I've included the keys to a great pitch here. I'm not going to review them all. Again, I'll send this PDF through to Kerri-Lynn so you can review it, but it includes a few tips on if you're actually reaching out to a journalist to introduce yourself and to pitch your vet clinic or your telemedicine practice and to get them to talk about it. It includes a few tips on how to make that succinct, concise pitch really readable and interesting for the journalist. And it also has a mock pitch that you can kind of model after. So I won't go through this in detail in the interest of time, but it will be in the PDF that's shared with you after. I did want to finish off just by talking about thought leadership. I think as anyone who is an expert in their space, whether it's me and you're an expert on PR or wills and estates in Canada, or whether it's you and you're an expert on pet care and telemedicine, thought leadership is about you owning that story instead of you waiting for journalists to write about you. So an example of thought leadership could be a submitted article or an op-ed. So most publications, whether it's the Globe and Mail or the Toronto Star or CBC, they accept submissions from people like you and me. And those could be, opinion pieces, why we need to move to telemedicine permanently in vet care instead of just during COVID as a temporary measure. Maybe an opinion piece could be, we need to stop adopting pets that we're not convinced we're going to keep after COVID goes away. Or it can be something that's a little bit more instructional, 5 tips to getting a new puppy, or, 5 things to know about telemedicine if you're visiting a vet virtually. But essentially the crux of this is these are articles or content that's created by you and that's submitted with your name on it in a publication. And the advantage to that is that you really get to own the narrative. I had a lot of clients back when I owned a PR agency who would do interviews with media outlets, and the article would be published and they'd call me and say, I didn't say that. I did not say the quote that's in the article, and I don't like it how it positions us. And I'd say, well, most journalists record interviews, so I'm pretty sure that you did probably say those things. But the advantage to a submitted article is that you get to own the narrative instead of waiting to see how a journalist is going to frame what you said. Also, it positions you as an expert, because if the article is, 5 keys to telemedicine by Erin Bury, all of a sudden I am the expert because I'm the one that wrote the article. You also typically get a nice little biography at the end of these articles with a juicy link back to your site, which again helps with SEO. And it's also not as difficult as getting a journalist to write about you. Getting the Globe and Mail to profile your business is much harder and takes much more work than writing an article and getting it published by the Globe and Mail. It's more work for you because you have to actually write that article, but it can often be a lot easier. So the steps, if you are interested in pursuing thought leadership, would be to brainstorm some topics. And again, go back to those tips I talked about earlier about what makes something newsworthy. Tie it to a current event like COVID or the increase in pet adoptions, and make sure that it's something that a journalist would say, oh yeah, my readers would definitely care about that topic right now. Most media publications have submission guidelines on their websites where they'll tell you exactly how to submit an opinion piece or a submitted article, and they might even have contact information to send a piece to those people. And then just send them an email saying, hey, I've written this article. Make sure you've actually written it in case they say yes. I've written this article. I'd love to know if you're open to publishing it. I think it would add value to your readers. And then you just kind of go one by one. Don't email 10 people at the same time because they all want original content. And it's really as simple as that. Now, it is time consuming in that you have to write the article, but there are great people out there like Nicole and like my PR agency that I have at Willful who can help you write that content. If you have a marketing person, if you don't, maybe look for a virtual marketing person who you can hire for a few hours to help you ghostwrite those articles if you don't have the time to do it. And then just a couple more minutes here. I'm just going to mention, PR is not rocket science. It's extremely time consuming though. Anyone can be great at getting PR coverage and getting into the media. But if it's not something that you have time for, that's where you need to think about what might make the most sense for you to manage that going forward or long term. And really your options are either to make it a part of your job, to make it one part of a team member's responsibilities. Maybe you have an office manager who might be able to do some of this research and put things together. You can hire someone in-house to handle that. Maybe it's a marketing person and PR is a small part of their role. You can hire a consultant or a virtual assistant or a freelancer, someone who can do work hourly for you and help you out with that. Or you can hire a PR agency, which is the most expensive option and probably not something you would be ready to commit to right off the bat. Hiring a consultant or a freelancer can be pretty affordable. So that's definitely something great to look into. And the key with any sort of external person is that they already have the media relationships, because the crux of PR is that it doesn't matter how newsworthy you are. If you can't get through to media and you can't get them to actually pay attention to you, you will have difficulty getting coverage. And so external folks often have those relationships already in place. So those are just a few high-level tips on how to kind of build your thought leadership and how to, think about PR moving forward. I'll send that full deck over to KL so that she can provide it after. And of course, happy to answer any questions in the chat or via email. I'm Erin at willful.co. And thanks to the Pawzy team